And I think you've kind of touched on two really relevant points there to see in the fitness industry. One is the starting point. I think a lot of people, they start working one of those jobs, whether it be a corporate job, something in that realm, and realize over some time that, you know, they're not necessarily happy in that. They don't feel like their work is having an impact, you know, whatever. I've heard the story so many times with our customers in terms of like, I was working at insert job here, but I really like fitness, or I had this life change that went through fitness, so I decided to go and do this. And then they get into it to be, you know, an agent of change, and a lot of times kind of realize quickly that it's not as easy to do because of some of the mechanics of the industry as well, and why such a high churn rate in the industry is that, like, people get into it to be caregivers, and then they get kind of turned into salespeople. And that, like, where that meshes, and this is what a lot of our conversation is going to be about today, where that meshes and how that incongruency kind of exists, ends up churning people out of it. So, I mean, on that note, like, you've worked, you know, big box gyms, boutiques, you've owned your own studio, you've kind of the whole range of it. What do you see some of the common challenges are in each of these, in sort of across these roles? What do you think some of the common challenges are, both working in the industry and for the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, I mean, especially going from the perspective of, you know, I was a manager, as a general manager, I was a floor consultant, I did sales, and then owned my own place, my wife, and then went on from there and saw all the different avenues. Even as an educator and a master trainer for a big company, trying to get our courses and our classes to be taught inside of studios and big box gyms was a challenge. You know, the bottom line is everybody wants to be the best. Everybody wants to, you know, their business to be the top business. And, you know, the challenge that I'm seeing, and even when we had our own studio, the challenge is making sure the lights stay on. That's your first challenge. You know, there's not a huge, you know, this is one of the arguments that we've always had in the industry. And one of the negatives is, you know, I didn't get into fitness to make a lot of money. But yet most owners I know of franchises or of, you know, larger big box, you know, they have money, you know, so it's who kind of gets the short end of the stick, and that's usually the people working and providing the services, right? So when we had our own studio, we invested a lot of money into it, and we had staff, and we paid staff, and, you know, I know how tight those margins are. And one of the hardest parts is you want to get the top instructors. And we paid, you know, we're going back 10 years ago, we were paying instructors $50, $60, $75 an hour, $95 an hour for some classes based on their popularity and their ability, not just their diva-ness, not just their ability to draw a crowd, but why they're drawing a crowd. And so that challenge comes now still to this day, where people get into the industry, they want to make money, they want to help people. And most people I know in the industry can't afford their own services. And that's a really big challenge, you know, going into the fact that most people now in the industry, you know, I said in a podcast, somebody else said today, we're a gig economy, right? The personal trainers, the group X instructors, if they don't work, they don't get paid, right? So often, you know, if you, a year ago, before this pandemic started, a year ago, if you walked into a gym, I'll guarantee you 30% of the staff in that facility were sick, had a cold, maybe had a fever. They weren't giving up work because that day of pay could have been $400, $500. Yeah. They're not going to give that up, right? So that's a big challenge. You know, and that's $500 billed. That's not what they're getting paid out of that, right? That's just what the gym was taking, and they would get maybe 25 or 30% of that. So the challenge in the industry is that everybody wants to make money, but where do we get the margins going, right? You want a better place, a better location, and the rent is going to be higher. So everything gets up incrementally. But over the last 35 years, nothing's changed in the industry. The pay structure is the same. You know, 25, 35 years ago, getting paid $25 for a class for an hour was amazing. We're talking 35 years ago. That was good pay, right? Back when they used records, I actually know somebody who did that in their aerobics classes. Well, when you're still getting paid $25 an hour in 2020, that's a problem. You know, my son can go babysit and come back 4 hours later with $25, right? He's 13. There's something missing, right?
Yep.
In that. So it's changing it and changing the dialogue, which is what I've been trying to do. over the last couple months.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on a lot of stuff that I've written about and presented about, and especially coming from the economics background. Like, I come from an economics background myself, and then came into the industry and went, holy whoa, like this doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense in the short and long term in terms of efficiency and sustainability when you look at those two measures. And there's all kinds of numbers, to show. And you're right. Like, I've been an advocate for this, of like, we need to rethink this business model, because it doesn't work for any one of the stakeholders, really. Like, it doesn't work for the end user. They're not getting the help or support they necessarily need. It definitely doesn't work for the trainers and the staff, because they don't get paid well. They don't get paid for the hours where they're not directly working with somebody. And that becomes harder. That becomes long days that you only get paid for certain hours. It drives the price of training up, which makes it prohibitively too expensive for the end user. Running a gym is expensive. You've got a lot of overhead. So you get into these business models that, are kind of predicated around that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We're needing to see a change. And I think that with COVID, with the pandemic, it's kind of forced that in a way, maybe not as quickly as we have, but there is a real opportunity here to evaluate it, whether people like it or not in this industry. It's going to have to change, because the old model of like membership access based, it's not going to work with limited capacities, and there has to be more of a shift towards services. You might see the model. I think you're going to see the model kind of flip on its head a little bit, at least for those that survived kind of through it. Did you enjoy that clip? You can check out the whole podcast on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to get more content on the future of fitness.